I'm Anna Mitchell on the Sunrise Morning Show. November 26th is the feast day of Blessed James Alberione, and since that is on Friday and we won't be here, Sister Helena Burns, a daughter of St. Paul, is joining us now to talk about her founder. Happy early feast day, Sister.
Well, thank you.
Let's start out with Father Alberione. Why did he found the Pauline family?
Father Alberione actually founded us when he was 16. We like to say that we were founded by a teenager. He had an experience during 4 hours of Eucharistic adoration in the Alba Cathedral in northern Italy when he was still a seminarian of Jesus in the Eucharist asking him to do something for the people of the new century. Now, this was the year, New Year's Eve, between 1900 and 1901. So the 20th century was just dawning, and Jesus let him know that, gave him this insight that it was going to be the century of the media, that the media was going to explode with all kinds of new means and ways, and that the church had really needed to be poised to use all these means to not just preach the gospel, certainly, but to help people in their everyday lives to make good choices, good decisions, to transform culture according to the gospel. So he had these big dreams that Jesus gave him when he was 16. And we're called the Pauline family because St. Paul the Apostle is our patron, the great missionary whom we believe would have been using every form of media known to us today to spread the gospel and transform culture.
Well, goodness gracious, he was quite the prophet then.
He was, and he had an experience of his own with what we call bad media. When he was in the seminary, a minor seminary, he was about 15, another seminary, not the Alba seminary, but another seminary in northern Italy, and he started off very devout, very pious, and he started to do a lot of bad reading. We don't know what it was. We don't know if it was novels, which were very frowned on at the time, or the modernist heresy, which was really big. But he started devouring media. We would call it today an addiction.
Yeah.
He was addicted to, he was reading a book a day, and his grades slipped. He stopped, praying as fervently. He became less virtuous. And the priests there, it's a 1,000-year-old seminary, and they just did not need this young man anymore. So he got the boot. They didn't even let him finish out his year. They sent him home. And it was a terrible crisis because at that time, if you were sent away from a seminary, that was it. You didn't get a second chance anywhere else. But his pastor, his parish priest, saw something in this young man, vouched for him, brought him to the seminary of Alba, and got him reinstated, which was a little miracle all of its own.
Wow, yeah.
And from that day on, he determined that would never happen to him again with media, and he was going to use these very means to help other young people, help the people of the 20th century. He used to say that he felt impelled to do something for the new century and the people that he would live with. That's the vision that Jesus gave him.
And that's just absolutely beautiful, especially when you think about today. And he actually had a fan in Pope Paul VI, did he not?
He did. Actually, he lived to be 87, so he personally knew all the popes because he lived right there in Rome. He moved down from northern Italy to headquarters in Rome. And Pope Paul VI, a lot of people don't know this, but his parents were in publishing.
Oh.
They were newspaper people, and so he especially loved the media. And they were pretty good buddies. He would follow very closely the work of Father Alberione, and he was there at his deathbed when Father Alberione was dying in 1971, November 26, 1971. Pope Paul VI came right to his bedside, and he was already in a coma, and they say he was so disappointed he kept calling to him, Father Alberione, and he didn't rouse, And he lived so simply and poorly. I guess one of the words that Pope Paul VI said, he looked around this little bare bedroom, and he said, this is where the founder of the Pauline family sleeps, So, he was always a good friend of the community, but, so was Pius XII, because the popes have always understood media.
Yeah.
The popes have always, Pius XI was the one who actually approved the Society of St. Paul, our priests, and he said, because they said preaching only belongs in the church, like in the parish church. And Alberione's vision was, no, we need to go outside of the church walls to where the people are and preach through the media. And what the church was kind of saying at that point, the people who, the minds that have to look at constitutions of new orders, was saying, no, priests cannot be dedicated to this. This cannot be a priestly function. But Pius XI said, oh no, we want an order of priests that does this. And now look at today with Pope Benedict urging priests to go online and blog and be available, as Pope Benedict says, with their priestly heart. They don't have to be technical geniuses, but, bring your priestly heart online. Be available for all the sheep out there, all the lost and not lost, that are out there. And that's the new forum. That's the new way people ask questions and search and find.
Yeah, and do you think that Father Alberione would be pretty impressed with today's media? Do you think he'd be enjoying this?
He loved the latest, newest means and technology. He used to tell us, don't stop and think, should we use this? The answer is yes. He said you use the latest, fastest means of media to reach the greatest number of people. And back in the 1960s, he even kind of predicted the Internet. He said someday, he was an avid newspaper reader, and he would say, someday we're going to get our newspapers through the phone lines. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
His whole thing was that we have to be so full of God that when we encounter any kind of media, content, technology, culture, whatever it is, we end up transforming the media because Christ lives in us rather than the media transforming us. Mm-hmm. And again, not that we have to be preaching all the time. He was very practical. He understood that people have many different reasons they use different types of media. And he would say things like, he said, the children are going to go watch the movies. I guess, I think we missed that whole culture, but back in the, 40s and 50s, there was that whole Saturday morning movie thing where all the little kids would go to the movie theaters, and watch movie after movie and cartoons and whatnot. And he'd say, well, the children, it's not that we need to prevent them. He says we need to prepare them for what they're going to see and then talk to them afterwards about it, which was a very media literacy approach even then. This whole idea of engaging the culture like St. Paul did. St. Paul was a man of his day, but his faith overtook any kind of worldliness, the kind of worldliness that would not be of God. We need to have it all, too, just like Paul did. Paul was a man of faith and a man of culture.
Sister, I understand you're working on a film about his life?
We are indeed. You can watch the trailer at mediaapostle.com. We're working with a small Catholic film company here in Chicago called Spirit Juice Studios. You can check them out, too. These young Catholic guys on fire for the Lord, they do beautiful work. SpiritJuiceStudios.com. And mediaapostle.com is where you can watch the trailer for the film.
Excellent. We'll certainly have those linked on sunrisemorningshow.com. And I know you've got yourself a fun little blog. Can you tell us what that is?
Oh, because my name is Sister Helena Burns, my blog is Hell Burns, HELL Burns.blogspot.com.
And it has the best blog name in all of the Catholic blogosphere. Sister Helena Burns.
Memorable.
It
memorable.
Really is. Sister Helena Burns, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Annie. God bless.